Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Waumsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 226, entitled I is for Images. It was published on Thursday the 22nd of April 2021. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and a couple of bits of housekeeping just before we begin. If you are into page builders or WordPress in general, well, we have an event for you. It's a summit. It's from May the 10th to the 14th, so that's 5 days. You can find it at pagebuildersummit.com, and I guess the giveaway is in the name there. It's all about WordPress page builders. So whether you're using the block editor, aka Gutenberg, or Beaver Builder, Elementor, Divi, Oxygen, whatever it may be, we've got 30 speakers lined up over 5 days teaching you how to use your page builder in the most efficient manner. So it really is lining up to be a very good event. I'd love for you to go and subscribe, get yourself involved. pagebuildersummit.com. There's an awful lot going on that week. Perhaps you might like to set some time aside in your calendar so that you've got plenty of time available. One more time, pagebuildersummit.com. Please go and sign up. Also, I'd like to mention the wpbuilds.com deals page. Head over to wpbuilds.com deals, and over there you're going to find a whole bunch of coupon codes for WordPress deals. They never expire. They're there 365 days of the year. And if you're in the market for something WordPressy this week, maybe go and check that out. And the last link I want to mention is wpbuilds.com/advertise if, like the following two companies, you would like to get your product in front of a WordPress specific audience. Well, you can do that at that URL. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud hosting platform that ensures simplicity, performance, and security. It offers cloud servers from 5 different cloud providers that you can manage through its intuitive platform. Some of the features include 24/7 support, free migrations, and dedicated firewalls. Go check it out at cloudways.com. And by A/B Split Test. Do you want to set up your A/B split test in record time, like in a couple of minutes? Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is that it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder, and the WordPress block editor. Go check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay, so on the show today, I is for Images. We're going through the letters of the alphabet, A through to Z, and we are talking about each letter 1 week at a time. And today, it's all about images. Well, goodness blow me, there was absolutely tons to talk about here. When I got to thinking about it, there really was an awful lot that I was doing every time I uploaded an image. So for example, what kind of quality of images do I use? Do I want to have something that's compressed so it increases speed and optimization and perhaps increases my SEO capabilities? What kind of images do we upload? Are we into pixels or GIFs or the new SVGs or WebPs? All of these kind of things. What kind of programs do you use to locate your images? Do you go online and look for royalty-free images? And if so, where? And how do you edit them? Do you fiddle with thumbnails to make things exactly as you want them on your website? Do you clear out old, stale images that are no longer in use? Like I say, lots to talk about. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Hello, it's another A to Z of WordPress where we attempt to cover all the major aspects of building and maintaining sites with WordPress. Today, it's I for images, but we could also include icons as well.
Ooh,
2 for
clever.
the price of 1, Nathan.
Yeah, that's very clever. You snuck that one in. That's good.
Yeah. So, Nathan, really, your business is called Picture and Words. So really, this is half of the web we're talking about in this one episode.
Do you know, it really was, wasn't it? Back in the day, it literally was half of the web. You know, if it wasn't words, it was pictures. But the internet, since I started my company, Picture and Word, has become so much more. You know, notably video, I suppose, and a whole bunch of other things. But it still represents a huge bit of what we do. You know, putting images online. I mean, they could be images from photographs, but they could also be, you know, graphics that we've created in applications like Photoshop and so on, and they make the web look nice. Without all of the images that we've got online, it would be a terribly boring text-based experience with the occasional, probably video of a cat thrown in for good measure.
Yeah, well, it's partly because we're so rubbish at typography, I think.
Yeah.
Do you know, I really admire those sites, don't you, where they are all type and they look beautiful. I just don't know how people do that.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think it's a real skill to be able to craft words that people want to do without spoiling it with images, spoiling in inverted commas, because if you're drawn in by the text itself, you must be a prodigious writer, which is why I use images all the time.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well, shall we start? Well, we talked a while before this, and really we just bitched, didn't we, about the WordPress Media Library?
Yes, there's an awful lot to say about that. Maybe that should just be our starting point. Is obviously we're a WordPress podcast, and the way that we interact with any images is the media library. When I came to WordPress, I came from Drupal, as I'm sure many of you have heard before, and the media library, we'll get onto other aspects of how it handles media later, but the media library at that time was really great. It was so superior to what we had over on Drupal. The way it looked, the way it behaved, the options available, the sort of minimal set of options, if you like, that were available were really great. I guess the problem that I feel now is that I haven't really noticed any major updates to the media library in the time that I've been using WordPress. Perhaps the underlying basis of it has changed massively, but on the surface, it's still the same. The default little square icons, which you can toggle over to be kind of more of a list view and so on. But you've got these two options, and it just doesn't really demonstrate what I'm actually going to see on the front end. Just see a little square representation of things, which I guess is good enough, but the internet has moved on and images are a massive part of it, and I feel there's work to be done.
Yeah, exactly. I think most people who interact now can, with lots of different services that are out there, free, like Canva, which allows you to manipulate your images. It does seem poor against that. But I think there was an update that wasn't that long ago, but it kind of washed over me. I'm pretty sure all that kind of ability to be able to rotate left, right, flip horizontally and vertically, I thought that was fairly new stuff, but I just thought, why is it there?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I am actually quite a heavy user of those editing options. I mean, I try to, on the most part, if I'm creating images, they will be created in third-party services, either apps on the Mac or some kind of online thing, like you say, Stencil or Canva, or I know that we're both users of one called Pixteller. But, I'll create the images that I'm going to upload. But there's quite a few scenarios where clients might need images uploading, and also on WP Builds I have people uploading images for things like the deals page, and just because of the nature of the way I've got it set up, they're all constrained to the same dimensions, and the mechanism that I have to upload them doesn't disallow the uploading of images should they not meet those constraints. So the constraint is it less than 2 megabytes or something like that, not does it obey these aspect ratio settings and so on. So the images get uploaded, and I could, if I wanted, go into functions.php and write a little bit in there to crop it in the way that I want it. But it's such an infrequent little thing, but occasionally somebody will upload something, it's just a tiny bit wrong, so I'll go and crop it. And so I use those tools a bit, and I quite like them. They're a little bit counterintuitive in that you have to, well, I was talking to you about this earlier. If you want to crop something, you have to actually go to the image, click edit, then you have to drag the crop that you want to make, and then press the crop button. Whereas for so long, I would press the crop button first because it felt like I was going to invoke the crop tool. So as an example, in Photoshop or something like that, you couldn't crop anything unless you'd selected the tool first. Whereas in WordPress, it's different. You do the thing that you want to do, then click the tool. I mean, rotate and flip, it's slightly different because you're not really doing anything that you need to interact with. But I do make use of it. It's fairly minor, but it works, and I think for most people it's probably enough. I guess if you were a client coming to WordPress, you might have an expectation that it could do more. So, for example, I would imagine as a client coming to WordPress, you'd think, well, why can't I write on the image? Why can't I make a meme inside the editor? Well, where's the option to add text? Well, it doesn't exist. Sorry.
And maybe it shouldn't. I mean, it's just like some of the cropping that you do. I wouldn't want to use that because it took me a long time to get there, but I found a nice little script that will automatically add in a description. It will automate my title based on the file name that I'm uploading. And, particularly alt text, I want that to be put in, something to be put in, because clients are doing stuff. If I go and use your crop tool there, it renames my attachment. My image gets a new name, and it gets a random bunch of numbers and letters at the end of it. So suddenly my SEO has been thrown out by cropping in WordPress.
Yeah, we experimented that with that a moment ago, where you went in, changed an image that had a sensible title and so on, and all of your alt tags and everything was set, and then you amended it, cropped it or something, and then all of a sudden it's changed, which I guess there's a good reason for that, because it needs its own kind of URL. But equally you would kind of expect it to, well, especially where things like alt tags are concerned. Did it change the alt tag, or was it just the file name?
Actually, the one I did it on didn't have my little script running on it, so I don't know what it should do. Yeah, I think it should do in theory, because it updates it. And I actually think that's an odd thing. It's an easy script just to put in to your theme and have that automatically generate. And it's good for clients as long as they get the correct file name. It tidies things up, because they're not likely to put alt tags in, and so this at least helps to some degree. But I wonder why there isn't an option like that at all within the system.
So you've got a little bit, I think I'll link to it in the show notes, but you've got a little script which essentially, if you've got an image and it's called, I don't know, image of a cat on a cushion, then when you upload it, the title of that image will obviously be that. But then it will overwrite the alt as well as the description as well?
Yeah, exactly. It will put all the same things in, so it'll work out as well. What I would tell a client to do, it's not my script, but what I tell clients to do is that they could just separate the words in that file name for their image with a dash, and it will strip out the dash and put a space in the title, and then put the same in the alt tag description as well. Or you could even put it in the caption. It's up to you, which you can fill all of them up if you want with the same thing, which might be useful if you're using a lot of captions as well. It's just kind of puts your title in there as well.
Yeah, that's really sensible, and I agree. Why wouldn't that be a toggle in the media library? Upon upload, shall we give your image some of these bits of metadata based upon the title? I guess the description one is supposed to be done manually, isn't it? Because you are literally supposed to be. So the example I used, picture of a cat on a cushion, is actually a great description. But if it was done for, I don't know, SEO purposes or something like that, where you were trying to cram it with keywords or something, then less so. It's got a particular use. But yeah, that's great. I'll link to that. That's quite a nice little script. I confess I do all of the editing. If I do edit anything in WordPress, which, as I mentioned, is not that often, then I'll do it in the opposite order. So I'll upload the image, edit it, and then I'll write the alt tags and the description. So I will override any override that WordPress has done by doing the crop. So it doesn't really affect me in that way. But I guess it's just a question of learning that process and going through it. But I do still feel it's got a long way to go. You look at the rivals out there. There's a lot that could be better in WordPress, but it's not. How many people would need the option to add text on an image? I don't know. Maybe hardly anybody. So it's maybe not WordPress's wheelhouse to put that stuff in.
Yeah, there is something that we talked about that I just updated myself a few minutes ago on. It took me years, probably 10 years of using WordPress before I realized that there was actually built-in compression. It reduces the quality of an image previously by 10%. And I didn't know about that this was happening. But since version 4.5, and I've only discovered this minutes ago, that's now actually 18%. The quality is reduced on your images in WordPress. And I just think nobody knows these changes are happening or that it's doing that.
So this is akin to the services like Smush and what's the other one called? the one with the little robot icon, short pixel.
Short pixel.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's akin to that. It's not reducing the dimensions of the image, which we'll get onto in a minute. It's literally reducing the file size, but keeping the dimensions the same by 18%.
Correct. Yes, that's it. And I suspect this is why we've talked about this before. Why it needs to have something like. Now I'm going to say this right. ImagicK, is that the name for it?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of service on your server, so it can. I think it needs that to be able to do this type of compression. But yeah, it's an interesting thing that these things would change, and you just wouldn't know about that. I mean, obviously, I missed it for a long time of using WordPress, and then I missed it again. I wonder that it's been changed.
I wonder why then, if it can do 18%, why can't it do more? Why is it not possible to say, actually, I'd rather that you did 40%?
Yeah.
I wonder why. I wonder why we don't have these options. And obviously, there are paid-for services, like we mentioned, WP Smush and Short Pixel, ImagicK, and then there's a whole bunch of others, which we won't go into. But they're a paid-for service, and if WordPress is doing this already to the tune of 18%, why not have a toggle where, actually, go nuts, give me 40%, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, but I think it's it's not intelligent like these other services that do this, and I don't know how it kind of works. I mean, most of the services we talk about do it on their own servers, don't they?
Good point.
So I really don't know, but I just find it interesting that things like this change and that WordPress makes those decisions on our behalf. You would think it would not do any of that at all and leave it up to the user.
Yeah,
but. So it's kind of a surprise one. It certainly was when I first heard about it.
Yeah,
it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, more recently, I can't remember what the version was, but it was a recent version within the last 6 to 8 months or so. WordPress has now taken upon itself the ability to crop the dimensions of a very large image down to a set of defaults, and I can't remember what they are. But I think it's something like 1920 by 1080 or something. In other words, if you upload an image larger than that, it's going to automatically constrain its dimensions and make it smaller, shrink it to those dimensions. And I can't remember whether or not it gets rid of the original or keeps the original. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that is now handled by WordPress. And realistically, those seems like fairly sensible defaults. I'm sure if you go into settings on a default install of WordPress, there's something in there. I can't really remember. But we don't really need images much larger than that. The display of something like that is very unlikely to be required. I mean, I could see that if you're let's say a photographer or something like that, you would absolutely want that to be switched off, because there may be instances where you really, really want to show the full detail of the great image that you've taken. But for most people, you just need it to show on the screen inside the width of that your theme allows, and so on. So that seems like a sensible default.
Yeah, it does to me. I mean, I did set that using Short Pixel and other tools before that. Mm-hmm. So I picked the 1920 as the widest that I go for my client sites. I think actually WordPress goes one higher than that.
Okay.
A bigger size than that. But I think that's sensible. I mean,
yeah.
You can't really need an image that's going to be bigger than the size of the maximum screen you can view it on, really.
Right. And in most cases, the images are going to have, the theme that you're using might well constrain a little bit to the left and the right and put the text that you're reading into a narrow channel in the middle. So, yeah, it just seems like a sensible default. However, the thing that still puzzles me that I genuinely don't get is thumbnails.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I mean, I'm sure you know this. That is to say, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you know this. But when you upload an image to WordPress, you're not just uploading that image and that's it. You're uploading an image, and then WordPress will create some other sizes, which is very helpful. Or at least I think it used to be more helpful, perhaps, than it is now. I could be wrong about this. But it will create 3 thumbnails, and they're actually listed. If you go into your WordPress website and go to Settings and Media, you can see the sizes there. But the problem is there's really no way of discovering where these are. how many of these are clogging up your system that you never use? Like, so for example, the default is to create a square image of 150 by 150. Well, great. Maybe that's what you're using. But if that's never used, that doesn't appear on, well, not easily anyway. There's no way of saying, I don't want that one. Can we just only have this one, or in fact none? Can I just have the original image with no variations created? So that's very puzzling.
Yeah, it is for me. Even the 150 by 150, that's the only the smaller thumb size is cropped, where the medium size and large size aren't. They're done to the dimensions, aren't they? So it's the maximum height. So and you need to put in your own filters to be able to create your own. And also, again, I don't know how many years, probably 15 years now into WordPress before I realized I could just put 0 in there and stop those crops happening if I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly a sensible way of doing it, is it? You'd think there'd be a toggle or a button. To put a 0, it's not entirely obvious.
Yeah, there's nothing that says that. And you like something which I don't like, which is its defaults to organize the uploads into the months and the years.
Yes.
As folders. And
yes.
I hate that.
Why?
Because there's been times when I wanted to search the one folder, particularly if I'm FTPing and get rid of things or just see them. And particularly when I was running products before and we put them, I go, when did we publish this product? We won't remember the month and the year. It just doesn't seem natural to me. I'm sure there's probably better ways of finding stuff. But yeah, for me, I just thought one folder.
That's a really good point. I guess my reasoning behind it is that often they'll be attached to, let's say, a post, and the post will obviously have a date. The date the image was posted, the date that the blog post was posted or whatever was posted, that custom post type post was created, will match up broadly with the month folder. So it's not that difficult to go through. But yeah, I can get it.
But it is if you change your published date.
Yes, of course. Then you have to go through version history and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I just quite like it. I don't know. It doesn't really cause me too much of an issue. It's interesting though, because there's a whole bunch of rival plugins, and the only one that comes to mind is one called Happy Files. And Happy Files is a third-party plugin. Again, like I say, I'm sure there's alternatives, but it allows you to create like a Finder or a Windows Explorer type interface within the media library, so you can arbitrarily create folders with sensible names, like categories. I don't know, you might have cat pictures go in the cat folder and dog pictures go in the dog folder and so on. And that seems like a real improvement, actually. And like so much of an improvement, in fact, that I can't see why that wouldn't be a default. You know, the idea that 80% of the people need this thing for it to be going into WordPress core. I can't see too many people saying, no, I would never make use of that. I think they would.
Yeah, it seems pretty good. I mean, I didn't actually, the free version's pretty generous, I think, on that, if I remember correctly. And they had a pro version which came out. And I was looking at the time, there is another alternative to tagging images, which I've been using. So that's why I didn't go down that path, which is Assistant, made by the Beaver Builder team, where you can actually tag so I started using that. But Happy Files is designed for that purpose. And you think, why isn't that something in WordPress? It'd be wonderful if it was.
Yeah, I have to say, if you've got a website with, a boatload of images already, I don't know how it copes with the legacy of a particular website. I'm imagining that it tries to cleverly help you put things into sensible folders, but I don't know. It's the kind of thing that would be best put in right at the very start and then used during the entire duration of the website's life. But you are kind of relying on a third-party vendor to be in charge of your media library. So I don't know, 10 years down the road, if you've got a website that's using that and that plugin goes out of existence, I don't know what kind of friction that could cause.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's always wanted by me, and I've really had not used what I think is the only alternative out there, a way of clearing up your images, the ones that are left over, or if you do want to get rid of some of those thumbnails that you've changed your mind about the sizes that you're going with. That happens quite a lot with me. I'll start off with some that I've set up for clients, and then there's a design decision. They've already uploaded a load of photos. So that means I've got a pile of thumbnails that are the wrong size. There is something called Media Cleaner, which is free on the repository, that is supposed to be able to clean up all of your stuff.
How does it? Version. What does it do? Does it detect whether something's attached? Because I know that in the media library there's an option to filter by unattached.
Right.
I'm guessing it's looking at that filter, and so if you go into the list view, well, I'm saying the list view, it may be in both views.
Yeah.
I can't see it at the minute, but there's an option to filter by whether something is unattached or not, and so maybe it's just expunging the images which aren't attached to anything. Which actually, you know, if you're on a cheap hosting and you've been uploading images for decades, then you may well be reaching limits for images that have no purpose being on there. That seems like quite a nice thing to do once in a while. Just go in and clean things out that are unattached to anything.
Yeah, well, I've really seen some of the sites, you know, that I've been looking after for maybe 10 years. Some of them that are blogging a lot. I mean, it really does grow the size of that folder. Folder in my case.
Well, I would imagine, aside from video, which I think most people will be using services like YouTube or Vimeo to keep the video, just because it's the best way to actually distribute it, not necessarily store it. But the images use tons of data compared to just text in a post. You know, you probably write 500 blog posts and it would be equivalent to the size of a small picture of a cat in terms of data on the server.
Yeah. There is, just going back to Media Cleaner, the Pro version, what it brings is one of the biggest problems, I think, for people, but I don't know how well it works, is it's got support for the major page builders. Nearly all of them, it supports it out there. So that's one of the difficulties when the images are not only with the media library, but they're also kind of cached in some way through the page builders.
Yeah, it mystifies me that we don't have an option in WordPress to click. Let's say we're in the media library and we click on the image of a cat. I would like to see a representation of everything that is on my server associated with that picture. So I'd like to see the thumbnail that's 150 by 150, and then under that I want to see the large, and under that I want to see the medium, and under that I want to see any other ones that I've got, and perhaps the option to delete them, perhaps the option to just modify that one, but certainly to be able to see them all would be quite useful, because they're just hidden from view.
Yeah, exactly. You have to kind of load them, usually in the page builder. When I'm looking for the square crop that I've got, and I don't know if it's done a good job. I don't know if it's cropped around the subject matter correctly.
It never crops around the subject matter correctly, does it? Let's be honest. Just going back to Drupal again. So this is at least a decade ago. Drupal, and I will not remember its name, but Drupal had a module where you could drop it into your website. So, no, it was in Core. It was in Drupal 7 Core. And it allowed you to arbitrarily come up with your own resizes, thumbnails and so on. So you would tell it through a WYSIWYG interface what you wanted it to be. So you would say, okay, anytime an image is uploaded, I want you to create one that is 120 by 120. Actually, no, make it 120 by 150. And then I want it to crop from the top down, or from the center, or from the bottom right, and then it would show you. They had this great default image. It was an image of a hot air balloon in the sky, and you could see, if you uploaded that image of a hot air balloon, that's what it'll look like when it's finished. You can see that it's cropped off the top because you told it to go center. And then if you change the dimensions, you could say, okay, great, I'm going to get most of what I want in. And it was just brilliant. That was 10 years ago, and it's superior to anything that we've currently got in the default media library.
I was feeling that, I wrote a blog post on this, the same that I was using those scripts as well to put in my alt tags, and I was so smug with myself. I was quite happy. And then I guess this is a plug for Stencil, really, because I use their WordPress plugin. I know there's others out there that will access the free images that are available, and there's millions of them now, aren't there? It's a collection of those. And I just thought I'd really nailed this now, because I had a script that would crop to what I wanted, that I could put into my theme. I had this alt tags. I could get my images directly through the what did I just say? I was going to say short pixel stencil. That's the one.
Stencil.
Yeah. And so in some ways it's been really, really good for that, because I've been able to do it. But I realized that none of this is really. It means that I don't really touch anything that's default WordPress.
You're trying to create. You've invented a system where you've bypassed it all. You're just using it for display. But all of the things that it's doing, you're letting a third party take over that, because it's superior.
Do you know what? There is one thing, though, moving on to some of the nicer things about what WordPress does with images. We're talking about creating all those extra thumbnails, and you might think, why might we need them? But it does also support image source set, which in theory means that it's going to deliver the size of image that's relevant to the browser resolution that's viewing it.
Yeah. This is a bright future, isn't it? And I wonder if companies like ShortPixel are going to suffer at the hands of all this, because once this has all been configured and set up correctly, I mean, I confess I don't really know a lot about this, and certainly haven't spent any time thinking about it. But in a future where the correct image is selected based upon what device or viewport is available, then I think that's going to just make things immeasurably better.
Yeah, I think short pixel will still be taking all your. Well, it's up to you to decide when you've got a third party like that, but it will optimize all those images. So what WordPress is doing with source set, supporting that, should still apply, shouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It's interesting, but in all honesty, all this time I've known about it, I'm still not sure if it's actually working. And of course, if you set different crops and that, you don't want it to decide for you what it's going to show, depending on the browser resolution.
Another discussion which we haven't necessarily written down in the notes, but we did start to talk about before we recorded, was whether or not all of this is a bit of a moot point anyway, because connection speeds to the internet are becoming fast enough that a lot of this feels like in the future it won't be relevant anyway. I mean, we know that images only get greater over time. The camera that I had 10 years ago was outputting things a fifth of the size that it's possible to shoot on a camera now, and all of that will still matter. Yeah. But I wonder if we're setting a default in WordPress of, let's say, 1920 or whatever it might be, if at some point the internet connections everywhere are just going to be so good that is not relevant. We don't need to worry too much about squashing it, because every device will be able to cope. And then, of course, we get into the whole debate about, speed testing and all of that, and whether or not SEO, shaving a few milliseconds over here, makes your site more desirable to search engines. It's hard.
I definitely think when it comes to parts of Google's Core Web Vitals, images are playing a large part in that. Because you've got to have that, I think it's called first contentful
paint.
Paint, that's it, where you see, and the images are going to be a big part of that. So I think always reducing that. And then, of course, Google have got their own standard, which is the WebP we were talking about earlier, which isn't fully supported across the web. So, I think they're still keen for us to kind of reduce our images, and the demand for faster loading pages has increased as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And also, just from an environmental point of view, the less data that's going across the wires, the less electricity that we're consuming and CPUs that we're consuming. So it is sensible to try and squash this down. Can we get onto that thing that you just mentioned, the format, the WebP? Because you uncovered something quite interesting a little bit before we recorded about the whether or not it's supported. Now, the usual, I suppose, and I'm going to get it right. I say JPEG, and I say GIF, and I say PNG, and I know that there's a whole variety of different things, but that's what I say. I'm really familiar with JPEG for photos, basically. GIFs for kind of animated things. That's the only example I would select that. PNGs, I would usually select if I know there's some kind of transparency. SVGs is not a image at all. It's a file format, and we'll come on to that. But do you know WebP is a Google thing? They created this new image compression algorithm, so a WebP image is compressed quite a lot more. I think up to sort of like 20. I think it was a third the size of PNGs and 25% reduced off JPEGs. But it's not fully supported yet. But is it supported enough to use?
Well, according to Can I Use, which I go to for everything.
That's a good website.
It is. I use it a lot. It says 73.33 as we're recording this, and it's really rapidly going up. So the sticking points are really as I expected, i.e. 11 doesn't, certain earlier ones. But I mean, that's really just below 1% now for that. And then we've got a problem with Safari. Safari 14, it's got limited support, but it's limited to those on Mac OS 11 and Big Sur. So anything before that, it's not supported. So we got really, almost 7% of people who are not going to see those images.
So Mac OS 11 is reasonably new. Big Sur is the current one. So obviously, if you're on the more recent versions of Mac OS, it sounds like Safari's got support for this. I don't know why they can't support that going back in the OS, but clearly they've decided not to. I wonder if that's a Google Apple thing. I don't know. But that if it's just that little portion of the Mac market and IE 11, are you ready to flip the switch on this? Would you do this, or are you going to use the short pixel option where you can serve that if it's available, and if not, I don't know how it works that out, but it knows whether the browser can cope with it, and if not, it serves up the original one.
I think that's how it's supposed to work, but I've not been brave enough to really test it apart from on some testing sites, and I haven't got round to it, and I'm still confused about, like you say, I mean, I understand the formats, but even so, even what you said, there's something to add to that I know a lot of people just don't know, and it's due to, I think, Adobe I'm going to blame for this. So GIFs, you say animated, that's all you'd use it for. But actually transparent GIFs
that's right. Yep.
Are really small compared to pings if you want transparency effect. And it's not even there in Photoshop, so a lot of designers have completely forgot about that optimization.
Isn't the transparency on GIFs, though, isn't it? There's no opacity.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to have that kind of. Yes,
so you can't. So, for example, if something faded into transparency with a GIF, you can't do it. It's binary. It's either that pixel is transparent or not. So you get rough edges. But if it's bold straight lines, it probably would work nicely. Whereas PNGs, I think you've got the option to be pixel by pixel opacity.
Yeah, but they're very heavy, aren't they? So there are those cases where you just want to isolate something, and it's like you say, very straight lines, and it does a really good job and a lot less. So, but it's often one that I'm surprised that a lot of people have been in this game for a long time because of Photoshop, because it didn't have it by default as an option for saving. Yeah,
I remember trying to get transparency for PNGs back in IE 5 and 6. Do you remember the day where PNGs were available but not in IE, and you had to apply all these JavaScript shims to make it work? Oh my goodness, we've come a long way. The SVG thing is quite interesting. So these scalable vector graphics that seem to be almost ubiquitous for logos and things, because you upload the one logo and it can be made into any size, and it will just look perfect at any size because it's a vector. It's not an image. The problem with it is that it's not an image; it is a vector, and because of that, it's a file, and the file can be tampered with in such a way as to make it malicious. And so WordPress has made the decision that this is not an image; it shouldn't be uploaded. But I use, and I'm sure many people do, I use a plugin, I think it's called Safe SVG, and to my knowledge, it strips out, it attempts to strip out, shall we say, the things which could be abused by others. And on that basis, I'm happy to use it, but I really only use it for the logo.
Yeah, I've started to use it a little bit more where I can, but I'm just not skilled in making my own vectors, so
Yeah.
that limits me. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like it should be time that maybe WordPress allows that. I've never quite. I mean, I get the caution because of the security issues, but is that not possible as well to put nasty stuff in images you make available as well? It seems like it's a part of the web now, isn't it? We're going to be moving more and more, I think, to SVGs because we want speed. Again.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there'll come a point where somebody will invent a technology just to cope with, I don't know, logos with SVGs, and it only contains data which is sanitized, shall we say. But at the moment, it is a problem, and it's circumvented in my case by this Safe SVG plugin, which I use quite a lot.
Yeah. Should we mention... Oh, we haven't mentioned icons. We said we would talk about icons a little bit. They're not really. I mean, generally, icons are type, aren't they? Not in images, but they can be SVGs.
Yeah, so we've got... I mean, there's a whole suite of that. It was all the rage, wasn't it? These icons that were basically font sets. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, Font Awesome, obviously, is the well-known one.
Yes, yeah. I really don't make much use of those. I know they are widely used. They're all over the place, aren't they? And now, of course, we've got emojis, which have kind of become ubiquitous to the point where, most WYSIWYG text editors will figure out what the emoji that you intended is with your keyboard shortcuts. And but I don't really make too much use of them. In most cases, I'm going to upload an image of the icon itself. That just seems to be the way I've settled on doing it. But they are hugely popular.
Yeah, because it's very convenient, isn't it? And it was a quick way of delivering sort of image content in a way through using type. But also with Font Awesome, they can be converted into SVGs as well. So which is probably the way forward for all of these things.
I mean, the only situation where I use them is for things like, I don't know, in the footer of a website, I might have the phone icon next to the phone number. It's just a little way of reinforcing it, but I don't use them anywhere else particularly.
Social icons, I guess, is
right.
For
right.
brands
That's that's a good point. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. And then we've got these kind of this new wave of animated icons, where you hover over an image of a phone and it wobbles slightly or pretends to ring, or I don't know, you hover over an image of a computer and the screen opens, and I must say I find them quite beguiling. They're quite engaging. When I see them, I do sort of double take a little bit and go, oh, I was not expecting that. And if the animation is done in a kind of fun way and it looks quite jolly, I am quite drawn to it, I've got to say.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by how things have quickly moved on that, because it was always a joke, wasn't it? We used to have the animated GIF when the web first came out, and it was dead for a decade or more, and then suddenly they came back in, the animated GIFs, for this
with a vengeance.
Yeah. But then it's moved to the kind of animated SVG, which I've been playing around with, trying to animate SVGs with a little bit of CSS, with using keyframes. I've started to play around with that. But now we go another step. We start to get into things like Lottie as well, which is doing things with JavaScript, doing the same kind of animation. So much has moved, I think, within just the last couple of years on that.
The thing about it is it just... right now, because it's all a bit new, it stands out, doesn't it? It just kind of creates that, oh, what is that thing moving? You were describing earlier how you've got these row separators, and in the case of one of them, it looks like a wave, and you've sort of animated 2 or 3 layered wave icons to move in some kind of way that makes it look like there are waves moving. And something like that, if I saw that on the page, it's not going to clinch a sale for you, but it is something which is going to make me stay for a few extra seconds. Just, what's going on there? Is that even yeah, that's moving. That's weird. I didn't. It's quite shocking and interesting, but I wonder how long it's got. I wonder if it's the sort of thing that we'll become annoyed with over time.
I think so. I think it's the novelty effect on it,
right?
And also, I don't think we like the fact that there may be a new way of doing it, which appears to be kind of lightweight, but I often think of CSS as always something that's very lightweight, but actually using something like keyframes really ramps up the CPU,
Yes.
for the visitor. And
Yep.
and particularly with animations at the moment, again with the Core Web Vitals thing, we've got that cumulative layout shift issue all the time with image stability, and those kind of things may have an impact on that. So
yeah, and do you want that stuff available on a mobile phone? It's more things to think about, more settings to configure. I don't want that moving on a mobile phone because it'll just look weird. There's not enough space for it to move in that way on a mobile phone. It's going to start to drain that person's battery more quickly. It's just there's just way more to think about. But I do like them. They look great. I've got to say, whilst I understand from a usability point of view, it doesn't really add anything. The internet isn't always about being like, static. Sometimes a little bit of movement is just fun.
Yeah. We can dare to have fun. But I wonder, really, because we are people who are looking for this kind of stuff. When we see something novel that someone's done that we've not done, it really stands out. We think, I want to do that because it's so cool. But I wonder if the average user is just so task-focused that they just don't even never consider it.
Well, I mean, look at sites like Amazon. There's not a lot of movement there, is there? It's just, they're very successful, but there's just no flashiness going on whatsoever. It's just very, very... Buttons haven't changed in years, and there's certainly no movement because they don't want you getting distracted with that stuff, do they? But if you're selling a course, a lifestyle course or something like that, having something light and moving and breezy and just a bit of fun might be exactly what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, have we done this?
No, I'll tell you one thing we haven't. We haven't talked about where we keep the images. Like, do we keep them on our own servers or do we take them over to a CDN? Should we quickly delve into that? I used to use, I haven't used it for a while, WP Smush. And they had a nice little handy facility where you could toggle a button and it would not only smush the image, that is to say reduce it in size, but it would also suck it up to their CDN and then rewrite all of the image links on your website to their CDN. And I don't really know I didn't measure what the benefit for that was, but in my head, the message that I'm getting is, well, this will be better. It's a CDN. It's globally distributed. Images are going to represent a significant proportion of the page load. Let's let something closer, an edge server. Let's let that deal with the images. That just sounded good to me. I've stopped using it because my website, the WP Builds website, it doesn't really have many images. It's got a background image, a featured image, and that's about it. There's not a lot of that sort of stuff going on. But I get the point of putting it on a CDN.
Yeah, I sort of do. I've played around with this. When it felt to me in the web, this is many years back, CDNs was the way forward. I've set up Max CDN. But interestingly, I'll go back on that one. ShortPixel has something similar, and I think ImagicK as well, which is the WP Rocket company, have I think CDNs for their images. But I did hear an argument, whether it's true or not, or at least, because most people think it would be good, but they did say that it can sometimes cause you problems that your images are coming in from one direction, but maybe your style sheets are coming in from your local server, and things it's not actually speeding things up because of the delivery, And I've heard this as well about CDNs, even when you are pretty much shoving everything in with the functionality. And there was certainly, when I was into it, I was running an e-commerce site. And to be honest, I couldn't tell it was speeding things up. I felt things had got slower. And then I read an article, which I still to this day don't understand, that tried to technically explain why sometimes you'll find it, particularly on e-commerce sites, that it can actually start to work against you because of the kind of delivery of the images against the other thing that's need to happen on the site to load the page. So you can kind of get this mismatch and slow down the actual load. So I think they're good things, but they don't necessarily always work for you.
Would it always work well if you were lazy loading images? Let's say you've got a nice long blog article, and punctuated throughout that blog article are a dozen images, and they're quite large in size. You need them to display the fine quality. And obviously, at the very beginning, when you're loading up the page, all the waterfall stuff is basically done. You start to scroll, and those images come, and they're coming from a CDN. That seems like a sort of no-brainer instance of using a CDN. Yeah,
I'm sure it is. It's just interesting. I just don't think there isn't. It's not a quick fix always. I think there's a lot of considerations on your side. That does make sense. And we didn't actually mention the fact that WordPress has now got its native lazy loading for its images.
Yes, good. Yeah, well. Very good. Yeah.
I always wonder again how that is going to work as well with measuring speed and Google. This kind of delay on your images. I guess because it only really measures that first
contentful paint.
Yeah, exactly. That one.
Yeah. I don't know. Another thing that we didn't talk about, just very briefly before we draw this to a close, is where do you source your images from? I mean, you can obviously pay for them, go to a whole bunch of paid-for services and get really, really amazing images. And honestly, the images that they have on those paid-for services, they are great. You can usually find exactly what you need. However, in most situations, I don't require anything that's that great, and I'm a heavy user of things like Pexels, Pexels, and Unsplash. But more recently, I've developed this habit where these online services like Stencil and Pixteller and all of those things, which is done in the browser, they have connections to a lot of these services, and I'm not entirely sure which connections they've got, but you can type in cat on a cushion and a whole bunch of images will come up, and I will then just drag it in, and at that point I can resize it and download it, and it's all done in my browser, and it's great. I really like those kind of things. And Stencil goes a step even further because they've got a WordPress plugin which just does it all inside of the the WordPress dashboard, which is even better.
And for icons, it's stunning, actually, Stencil.
Yeah.
I don't know where it gets them from, but there are a bunch of services. You mentioned one, and I remember Pixabay as well, that used to supposedly collect them from everywhere.
Yeah, the one I've used is called LibreStock, and I haven't used it for a long time, so I don't know if it's any good. But yeah, it's like an aggregator of all the other, or many of the other sites,
There's a lot of politics about that, isn't there, at the moment, about whether people can use that, even though it's free to use them in other services. And So there's also a bit of politics as well with Unsplash, which has got an amazing number of. I mean, I haven't till just recently needed to go to that directly, but I went there just for my searches recently, and I thought, wow, there is just so much stuff there.
Yeah, and you can often download the size that's most appropriate to you. It's not a one size fits all. You can go and select the super small one or the really big one, and it's equally free. But obviously, if you only need something tiny, you might as well have the tiny one, and then things like Short Pixel and Smush don't need to do anything like as much work.
Yeah. Do you ever worry about the legal aspects? Because anyone can submit their photos. They're only really giving their assurance that this is their image.
This is one of the reasons why I use Pixteller, because if I use it in Pixteller, I never delete anything I create there. I just create it and stick it in a folder, and so then I've got this is probably sublimely ignorant, but then I've got a record that I got it from there, and my understanding from the document that I read about Pixteller is they promised that these are, was it COO?
Okay.
They're Creative Commons, and I've got the license to use it in whichever way I like. So that's the way I approach that, and I do that also with music that I download. I've got various websites that I download music from, and I save them with the exact title that it gave it to me, because it's usually got this random string of numbers at the end, and I presume that that's some kind of receipt or something like that. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just save them as they're originally intended. But I know you've got to be careful of this stuff, but I'm hopeful that that's enough.
Yeah, I've not heard, not anyone I know of having any issues with using those at all. I mean, I don't actually need them that much. You do for putting out content. You use a lot of images there. I've never really needed it. Either the client has something, or I end up going to, as there's some great deals often on deposit photos, which has got really good images. I end up using a lot of those rather than needing to rely on the free ones.
So that's a paid for service that you've acquired a license for a bulk amount, about 1,000 images or something, and you just slowly go through that, and then when you've used that all up, you intend to buy another pack. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, these are AppSumo deals. I'm sure you must have got them for.
I think I probably did for deposit photos, but then the workflow of using something like Stencil or Pixteller is just so much easier. I just go for that because I'm creating it as a thumbnail with all the other stuff and the title for the post and all that in it already, so it just makes it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have done it now. That was interesting. I honestly, when we said we were going to do images, I was quite excited. Quite like the idea of talking about images. It's just such an important part of the web. You kind of forget about how important it is. But imagine if you could click your fingers and take images out the web. How dull it would be.
Yeah, indeed. Images are good.
Images are good. That's it. We'll end it there. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. It was very nice chatting to David Waumsley once more, all about images. There really is a lot to say, isn't there? When you think about it, you just sort of think, oh, I upload images to WordPress and that's about it. Well, turns out, no, there's absolutely tons that you could say, and we did say just about all of it. I hope it was of interest, and I hope that you enjoyed the podcast. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud hosting platform that ensures simplicity, performance, and security. It offers cloud servers from 5 different cloud providers that you can manage through its intuitive platform. Some of the features include 24/7 support, free migrations, and dedicated firewalls. You can check it out at cloudways.com. And by A/B Split Test. Do you want to set up your A/B Split Test in record time? The new A/B Split Test plugin for WordPress will have you up and running in a couple of minutes. Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder, and the WordPress block editor. You can check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay, just before we go, one final plug for the Page Builder Summit. Head over to pagebuildersummit.com, where you'll find a whole bunch of speakers, 30 plus speakers, all talking about different page builders and ways that you can increase your proficiency with those page builders. It's all happening from the 10th of May to the 14th of May. So in a couple of weeks' time, head over to pagebuildersummit.com now and get your registration underway. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that. As this week was a discussion with my good friend David Waumsley, next week will be an interview. That, of course, will be episode number 227, but you'll have to come back next week to find out what it's all about and who it's with. We'll be going live as we do every Monday, 2 p.m. UK time, wpbuilds.com/live. It's the This Week in WordPress show with my good friend Paul Lacey, which we then put out on a Tuesday, so you could join us for that as well if you like. But if we don't see you for any of that, hopefully we'll see you back here next week. Take care. Cheesy music fading in. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now.